believe in the gun. And our players don't use it most days. They use it every day.
In my 20 years as head coach, I've used the gun every single year. Well, my dream as a coach that everybody would grow up with the gun, because getting all those reps would make my job a lot easier.
Welcome, everyone, to the NABC Championship Webinar Series. This is number 100 today. I'm on the board of directors for Two-Year College Rep, and I'm also with Championship Productions. The NABC, I'd like to special thanks to the NABC, Jim Haney, Reggie Mitten, Troy Hilton, who's back with us today. And he's been through a lot of these. Eric Weberg, Rick Letty, Mark Heatherman, Wade, I mean, everybody. They've been so good and helpful and supportive. The Gun for sponsoring, and they've been with us through all of our clinics in the fall and the spring that we were going to have. Sideline Interactive gave away $11,000 score table on their court. Craig Reed and the KBA and the family for all the marker boards and clipboards and magnetic boards that they gave to coaches that were quarantined or couldn't get in their office. Mike Bray for all of his support, the past president of the NABC. Jamie Dixon, the current president, and all the work he does, and Mike Bray, and the board of directors for all their support, time, effort, and speaking, and their social media platforms to help promote. Championship Productions, Bill Bergen, Nate Landis, Daryl Bennett for all they do. I just want to hit on two things before we get going. We were going to have these unbelievable clinics in Chicago and in Myrtle Beach and Springfield and Nashville and Las Vegas, and the registrations were off the charts. But what Championship did is they created these 5 virtual clinics. You can get all 5 of them, 70 some speakers, 75, 80 speakers, same coach, same topic, different coach, same topic, or the same coach and a different topic. And they're unbelievable. So I think you can get it for like $125. There's also a coupon if you buy a video at 25% off. And then I would just say that we're going to be back, we hope, with the fall clinic, and then spring. We'll keep you guys all informed of that. But the last thing before we go, we've got 2 speakers left in these NABC Championship Webinar Series. A lot of coaches are going to need help, and a lot of programs and a lot of families. That benevolency fund, if you can contribute anything, it'd be greatly appreciated. We're really having pretty good numbers. I think we've got close to 100 people that have contributed. But if you could, if you can, if it fits your budget, it fits what you have or need. But we also understand that some people can't. And that's why we did these things for free. And so with that, I've got the opportunity and the privilege, Troy and I, to introduce Steve Lappas, Big East regular season champion in 1997, Big East tournament champion in 95, NIT champs in 1994, regular season champion in 1992, MAAC Coach of the Year in 1992. And Coach Lappas is going to talk about offensive concepts, man and zone. Coach, it's an unbelievable honor to have you on. You're one of the best on TV. I love when ex-coaches are on. Not that I wanted to be ex-coaches, but you bring a great perspective to other coaches and the fans watching the game. So thanks for being with us, and look forward to talking to you today.
Well, I'm so happy to be here, Tom. It's exciting for me because, you get a little rusty in terms of doing these kinds of things. So I'm excited to be here again with coaches, and excited to get this thing rolling and talk about the topic of offense.
Well, our first question to you is this. Your journey, you were a high school coach for a while, then you got into Villanova as an assistant, and then Manhattan as a head coach in Villanova, and then UMass. Could you talk about your journey through, you started 1978 as a high school assistant, and then you became the head coach. Just journey, who was there to help, who paved the way for you to get all the way to UMass and where you're at today?
I was very fortunate, Tom, because really I kind of had this dream from when I was like 20 years old, that I wanted to be a Division I head coach. And, I was a half-assed Division III player and really didn't know anybody, didn't have any connections, didn't know anything. And so I decided to start, working the camp route. And I got to be honest with you, 5 stars. I'm sure you've heard this from a lot of people, and Howard Garfinkel and Will Klein and those guys giving me a chance to work their camp gave me some opportunities to get to know people. And really the bottom line in that business is you got to know people. You got to network, and you got to try and get out there. And I was very, very lucky. I coached in high school, as you said, and my last year at Truman High School, we won the city and state championship. But more importantly, we had a great player, which you have to have when you win like that, named Rod Strickland. And having Rod, a lot of coaches were coming in now to talk to me about Rod. So now I started to meet some people and kind of, try to network and get in there. And I was very fortunate that Rolly Massimino was one of the people who came in to recruit him. And ironically, we built up a great relationship. And the funny thing was he offered the job to someone else first who turned it down. And then he offered the job. It was called the restricted earnings coach. You could only make as much as a scholarship cost. And in 1984, that was like $8,000. But it's funny. I was a New York City teacher as well as coach. And I'm one of the first guys to give a party to take a pay cut. And it was, but I knew this is what I wanted to do. And meeting Coach Massimino was obviously a huge key in him giving me that opportunity. And it's funny. I need to let all the high school coaches out there know this, and coaches. He told me, I'll hire you, but we're not going to recruit Rod Strickland anymore, because he didn't want people to think there was a quid pro quo for hiring me. So but that tells you what kind of guy he was. He should be in the Hall of Fame. That's a story for another day. And then the last thing I'll say about the first part of my journey is how lucky am I? I hook up with a guy like Rolly Massimino, who's one of the top coaches in the country. And my first year there, we win the championship in 1985 in Lexington, Kentucky. So things happened after that. And, I got a shot at Manhattan College. And, I tell people all the time, Manhattan College was not hiring Steve Lappas. I grew up in New York City, so obviously there was a connection. They were hiring Rolly Massimino's assistant. It could have been Joe Blow. It could have been anybody. I happened to be Steve Lappas, was Rolly Massimino's assistant. So being hooked up with the right guy obviously makes a huge difference. And then you got to win. You got to have some great players, some good assistants, and hopefully things turn out.
Coach, I don't see that restricted earnings lawsuit check on the back wall there anywhere.
Yeah, how about that? How funny does that sound? Restricted earnings. Does that sound like a crazy thing in the United States of America?
I tell you, my wife loved it when that check came in the mail.
That's right.
So let me ask you this. You've been around some great coaches through the recruiting process. You worked for a great coach. And now as a broadcaster and a color once you're a coach, you're always a coach. So when you look and you go to all these games and you see new coaches, young coaches, old coaches, all that, what are some common traits that you saw in those coaches that make them so successful?
Well, I think the number one thing, and if people ask me, like, if you could give somebody one piece of advice, I would say the most important thing you could do is communicate with these kids. And I know everybody says kids have changed, and I haven't coached in 15 years, and I get that. But really, there are certain parts of teaching and coaching that are always going to be the same. I don't care if it's 100 years from now, 200 years from now. It's about communicating to them and getting them to believe in what you are saying. That is the key thing to coaching, teaching, leading, you name it. I think that's where it all falls.
I'm going to take you back to 1978. If you could tell that Steve Lappas in 1978 what you know today, or most important thing, what would you tell him about the X and O's and coaching?
Well, I'll tell you, I really found out when I got to Villanova with Coach Massimino just how much I didn't know. They would diagram plays on one of these boards, and by the time I figured out the first pass, they'd already erased it. I did not know anything X and O wise when I got to the collegiate level. Now, I'm sure there are high school coaches out there that are much better. But, when you coach in New York City, you don't have assistants. You don't have, you're not bouncing ideas off anybody. You're kind of just doing what you want. So there's so much. I found out quickly, and this is another key thing that you need to know, Tom. You need to always know what you don't know. And I realized very quickly what I didn't know, and I was going to get myself up to speed so that I could be the kind of coach that I wanted to be.
Troy, you got any questions right now? Because I could go on forever with Coach.
Yeah, hey, Coach, thanks again for being on. The question I wanted to ask is, you already touched on it a little bit, that 85 championship. And, a lot of times I get a lot of people asking me about, to present at the convention about the mindset, with coaches and stuff like that. Can you kind of give us a little bit of behind the scenes, how Coach handled that 85 championship game after already losing to him twice during the regular year? And what did he do to convince them that they could win this game, and then just how it was handled? It was just, I've never heard it, so I've always been wondered about it.
Well, fortunately for us, Troy, we played them many times over the course of – that was my first year, but Eddie Pickney was a senior. He played against Patrick Ewing 8 or 9 times in his career and had many great games. Eddie Pickney was not Patrick Ewing, but he was a great player in his own right. So we had a confidence. They beat us in a 2-possession game down at Georgetown. They beat us by 7 points at home. So we knew that we could play this game. And we really – I know everybody says it's the greatest upset of all time. I'm telling you now, we didn't think so. And we game planned. We weren't – and I've game planned for teams when I said, man, I'll give you an example. When I used to coach, Allen Iverson was playing at Georgetown. To game plan for him, we used to say, we got to do this, 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 and then we got to pray he misses. Because really, a lot of times, that's what it comes down to. We didn't go into that game with that thought. So we went into it really like it was a regular game, not like it was a national championship game, a regular Villanova-Georgetown game. And a lot of people don't know the story. Coach Massimino was a tremendous motivator, and he was a tough love guy. He was a guy that was tough on those guys, but they knew he loved them, and they knew they bought in. They had what we call blind faith. If there's one thing coaches need to get, you ask me, if there's one thing I can get from my players, what is it? I would say blind faith. And if you can get blind faith like our guys had in Coach Massimino, it makes a difference. I'll tell you one of the things that Coach Mass said to them, he said before the game, he said, remember this, play to win, don't play not to lose. He always tried to stick that thought in their mind. And the other thing that happened that was kind of different, very different, that morning in our hotel, Al Severance passed away. Al Severance was the coach of Villanova for 25 years before Jack Kraft. And he was in the hotel. He was there for the game. He passed away that day in our hotel. And we were at pregame meal that day. And I'll never forget Coach Massimino. The last thing he said at pregame meal, he said, you watch, guys. Al Severance is going to be on top of that rim, and he's going to be blocking Georgetown shots for us. So, this team was prepared, ready, experienced, and they knew they could win. Now, here's what I have to say. We shot 79%, and we won by 2. So that tells you how good Georgetown was. But we knew we could win. And when people talk about it as the greatest upset, I love it because it kind of puts us in a place we're kind of by ourselves. Maybe the NC State team the year before, but it's just wasn't that big an upset to us.
Troy, can I follow up on a question on that?
Absolutely. That's all
Coach, you're sitting on the bench as the restricted earnings coach, which you probably did a ton of coaching and recruiting and scouting. But those last couple minutes, those last couple seconds, when did you guys start thinking, we're going to win this game? We're winning it. When it came to reality, not just we know we're going to win, but when did it come to reality? We're winning this thing.
Well, I can tell you exactly when it came to reality that we said, we can win this thing. Not that we were going to win, but we can. And it was about 4 minutes to go, and Georgetown decided to hold the ball. And we were ecstatic because we were trying to play a slow game. We wanted there was no shot clock. That was the last year of no shot clock. So we were fine playing a slow game. Hey, let's face it. You're playing one of the best rebounding teams in the history of the game. The less balls that go up on that backboard, the better off you are. So the less possessions, the better off it was for us. So they're holding the ball with 4 minutes to go. We're looking at each other saying, wow, this is great. And then they threw it away. And now we had the ball and the lead with 4 minutes to go. And that changed. Not that we didn't think we were going to win, but, we were worried about – that's when we started thinking, we might win this thing. And then – obviously, at the end of the game, we just got to we were a very good foul shooting team. We were a team with veteran guys. We didn't throw the ball away. once we got the lead with 4 minutes to go, we were really tough.
My last one about Villanova, you, Coach Rolly Massimino. Can you just share with us, because we've worked with him after he left and went to Florida and coached. Can you just share what was in him, what he was like, and how it rubbed off on you?
He was, first of all, a very emotional person, the son of Italian immigrants, and he wore his heart on his sleeve, and that came with his players. He was a tremendous teacher. But when I think about him as a coach, I tell people to this day, he was like a mad scientist. He would revel. We would sit in that office for 5, 6, 8, 10 hours at a time, X and O'ing. And for him, it was all about making a defense that the other team had no idea what we were doing. And I'm telling you, he was like a mad scientist. And he would his hair would be all ruffled, and he'd have one of these boards like that, and just X and O and X and O and X and O. And one of the great things, he would look at me on the bench, and literally, we would change our defenses almost every game based on what you ran. And that's a lot of how I built my offensive concepts that we're going to talk about. His defenses were based on what you did. And he tried to make you think you were doing this when really you were doing that. And I'll tell you one story before we get going. James Dickey was coaching the University of Houston a few years ago, and I was going to do his game. I hadn't seen him in probably 15 years. And I'm with my partner, Andrew Catalan. We're going to shoot around. And I said, Andrew, you watch. The first thing James Dickey's going to say to me is that when we played Kentucky, when he was an assistant and I was assistant in Villanova in 1988, he's going to say, man, we had no idea what you guys were doing. I hadn't seen him in 15 years. I go up to him and say, James, hey, how you doing? He says, boy, Steve, we had no idea what you were doing when we had Rex Chapman and those guys in 1988. That's what Rolly Massimino was about. I'm going to make you think I'm doing this, but I'm really doing that.
Awesome. Awesome. Coach, I'm going to do this. Troy and I will monitor the question and answer. I would do one thing. Can you tilt your computer down a little bit just so when you start doing the marker board, we're going to get more of that.
It's an iPad, so it's not that
that's
simple.
fine.
I'll do the best. I don't know how I could do this any better.
Troy and I will be on, and so will Lonnie. We're not going to leave you, so you just – we may have lost – there you go. That's good. That's good.
Is that good?
Yep, Coach, I'm going to turn over to you. Concepts for man and zone. We're here. I'm going to go blank, but I'm here and watching, okay?
You got it.
Thanks, Coach.
No problem, Tom. I'm really excited about it. Hey, good to be with you guys. Haven't done this in a while. And as I was talking about what formed my philosophy, and what formed my philosophy on offense was how good a coach Rolly Massimino was on defense, as I started to say. His scouting was so good that if you had said, and our guys were so well schooled in X's and O's, where we could do scouting reports, we could give them literally 15 plays of the other team in one day and tell them how we wanted to defend it, and they could do it. And that's why when I became a head coach, I said to myself, I don't know about running set plays if that's the way to go, because I learned so much about scouting reports and stopping set plays that I decided I wanted to try something else. And I had never really been exposed to it. I decided I wanted to be a motion coach. I wanted to teach our guys how to play, not teach them plays. I wanted to teach them something that, to me, was unscoutable. Motion is really unscoutable. Sure, you can scout tendencies, you scout personnel, no doubt about it. But it really is unscoutable in a lot of ways in terms of you stopping it. Now, I will talk a little bit later on certain ways to stop it. So I decided I was going to try this motion thing. And I was nervous because I never really did it before. But what I found, and here's one of the key things, in the course of teaching and coaching motion, your instincts as a coach will come out. You'll see things that are going on that your guys are doing in the course of playing, and your instincts will come out in terms of what they're doing wrong, whether it's spacing, whether it's not reversing the ball. All these things that are regular offensive concepts are going to come out. And understand this. The great thing about motion is you could coach your defense and your offense at the same time. Think about this. If you're running set plays in practice in the half court, your guys are guarding set plays that they know. Okay, you could do shell drills and all that stuff to help your defense, but if you're playing against motion, you're working on your defense and your offense at the same time. So when I was coaching when I was a collegiate head coach, because when I was a high school coach, I didn't have an assistant, and I didn't run motion as a high school coach. I started with my first year at Manhattan College. We had one coach who would watch the defense and one coach who would watch the offense. And then obviously I was watching everything. So the great thing about motion, even if you're playing, and I'll talk about the breakdown drills of 3-on-3 and 2-on-2 and things like that to build up to a 5-on-5. But the great thing about motion is it's unscoutable. You can work on your offense and defense at the same time. So you're never, ever, this is not an offensive segment of practice. No, every segment of practice is offense and defense. And I thought it was a good selling point to kids to tell them, no, it's kind of, we're playing like we're playing in the playground. And it's funny, I know I grew up playing in the playgrounds in New York City. And some days, in those playgrounds, if you didn't win, you were sitting for 2 hours. So winning was critical. And really, what were you doing? You were playing motion. So teaching kids how to play as opposed to teaching them plays, making yourself unscoutable, working on your offense and defense at the same time, all key factors. And when I put this talk together, it was to talk about concepts of offense in man and zone. But there are a lot of concepts in man and zone that are the same for both. Right now, we'll talk about some breakdowns and some things that we did initially to get our guys to understand motion offense. Now, kids, when you tell them the first time we're going to run motion, they're sitting there thinking like, wow, what does that mean? I could do anything? What can I do? Well, I said, how about this, guys? There's only 7 things that you can do. If you have the ball and you pass it, there's only 7 things you can do after you pass it. And guys look at you and say, really? Yes, only 7 things. Now, one of the things you can do is you can pass and stand there. That's one. One of the other things you can do is you can pass and screen the ball. Sure. Number 3, you can pass and go behind and get the ball back on a handoff. Sure. Number 4, you can pass and basket cut. Number 5, you can pass and cut to the baseline area. No doubt about that. Number 6, you could pass and screen away. And number 7, and last but not least, you can pass and replace yourself. So 7 things that you can do. And let me just say one thing. When I talk about pass, and you can pass and screen away, as I said. You could pass and basket cut. You could pass an inside cut. That's pass to the baseline. Okay? You could pass and replace yourself, which means, and replace yourself is not standing. To replace yourself, you're going to make like you're going to screen away and come back. That's replacing yourself. Now, of those 7 things that and the guys would look at you and say, wow, that's right. There's only 7 things I could do. And people think there's like 1 million. There's not 1 million. There's only 7 things you can do once you pass the ball. They like that. It gave them some sort of a basis to start out with. But I told them this. 3 of those things we don't do. I only let my guys do 4 things once they pass the ball. I didn't believe, obviously, the number 1 no-no in any offense, pass and stand. You never pass and stand there. That's number 1. The other ones that I didn't do, now you may be able to put it in your philosophy. That's up to you. I never liked bringing somebody else to the ball. Spacing to me was one of the key things to great offense. And I think man or zone, we'll point both out, spacing is a huge key in offense. So I didn't like passing and going to screen. Plus, and I'm not saying I don't like pick and rolls, but I don't like pick and rolls with like players because they're too easy to switch. Now, if you want to run a pick and roll with a big guy coming off the block and running a pick and roll, I like that better. But we ran some set plays, and in our set plays, we did run some pick and roll. We didn't pick and roll much out of our motion. You may like to. So we don't pass and stand. We don't pass and screen the ball. And the other thing we don't do is we didn't pass and go get a handoff. All for the same reason. Those 2 for the same reasons. The pass and screen for the ball, and the pass and go get it back. we didn't like because it brought two guys into the same area. It hurt spacing. And obviously, the third one, you never pass and stand. You can never pass and stand in any offense. And again, passing and standing here is different than passing and replacing yourself, okay? So now our guys say, okay, we got 4 things that we can do. And we would do a lot of 2-on-2 drills, offense and defense, where the coach was the reversal guy. And you teach guys how to use screens. Now, think about this. You can run the greatest set plays in the world, but if you don't teach guys how to use a screen, like in most set plays there are screens, and how to use those screens, you're not really teaching them the game the way they need to be taught. And we told our guys, how about this? Don't worry about the ball. Here's the coach with the ball on the weak side. Don't worry about the ball. You worry about how you're being guarded. And that's going to dictate where you're going to go. And we taught 4 basic moves about how to use screens, and we would do it and it depended on how you're being played. So you screen, and if this guy is going to, you could run a straight pop out, okay? That's move number 1 is a pop out. Move number 2, let's say if you screen, and the defender is getting all up over the screen, you could back cut, move number 2. If he decides he's going to get on top here and you're setting a good screen, you could curl to the basket. And last but not least, the defender is cheating way up. And here comes the screen. You could fake up and flare. So there's 4 ways of using a screen. And we would literally have the guys play 2-on-2 live where they reverse the ball to the coach. And they play only on one side of the floor. We'd call it 2-on-2 ball side. So you play only on one side of the floor, all down screens for now. We haven't incorporated any back screens yet. And one of our rules was you down screen when your back is to the ball. So the ball is here. I pass, my back is to the ball, I got a down screen. We don't, because you wonder sometimes, you say, well, if we're at this angle here, how do I know this guy's not going to back screen? No, we didn't back screen at that angle. We're going to back screen, I'll show you that later, but when my back is to the ball, I'm going to set a down screen. So we would play 2-on-2 like that. And one of the things, and I'm going to tell you this, I think this works in any offense. The guy that we always concentrated on a lot offensively was the screener. I used to call the screener the forgotten man. And the reason why we called the screener the forgotten man was, you think about this, okay? When I go to screen, these 2 defenders, what are they always talking about? You know what they're always talking about? How to get over the screen to guard the cutter. And you know what they forget about? The screener. So we would tell our guys, okay, if he back cuts, the screen has got to come straight back to the ball. I can't tell you how many shots you get by having the screener react to the cutter. If the cutter came out on a pop out, we would tell him to flare to the corner. So in all these drills, you're not worried about the cutter. You are. The cutter's worried about getting open. Yes. And that's the other thing you got to do. You got to teach your guys how to get open, how to V-cut, how to use screens. Very important. But we would tell our guys, beware of the forgotten man. And the forgotten man is the screener. Because when the screen comes, what do those 2 defenders do? I got him. Got to get over. But you forgot about the guy who's setting the screen. And the other thing that we used to tell our guys, and we used to show it a lot, and I love this term. The more, because people say, well, how do you get your guys to screen? Well, how do I get our guys to screen? First of all, we tell them, and they would see it. I would say, guys, I'm going to think, what if the screener is the forgotten man? What does that tell you? It tells you that the more screens you set, the more shots you get. and they look at you crazy. Well, I'm screening for that. Yeah, you're screening for that guy, but you're the forgotten man. So if you set a lot of screens, you're going to be the forgotten man a lot. And the more you're forgotten, the more shots you're going to get. So there was a good way to motivate guys to set screens. So we play 2-on-2. Then we would play what we would call 3-on-3 ball side, and we'd incorporate a post guy. So where these three guys are going to play, and coach is here, and I'm the reversal guy. And as we said, you set down screens when your back is to the ball. You set back screens when your back is to the basket. Back is to the basket, he's a back screener. Most of the time, big guys, but nowadays, that 4-man who's become kind of he's more of an outside guy now than he was when I was coaching, but he's still a guy that you hope can go a little bit inside because that's very, very important. So who's setting a lot of back screens? A guy who basket cut. It's not only big guys. If I basket cut, and here's the other thing that I didn't say. The three-point line is a great spacing mechanism. You need 15 to 18-foot spacing. And now understand this, we spend a lot of time on offense. And it probably cost us sometimes on the defensive end, even though we were playing both at the same time, as I said. But spacing is critical. And if your guys are playing half-court offense and you see they're like this, you got to say, whoop, blow the whistle and say, guys, oh no. If you cut to here, you should not have cut to there because you see one of your guys. You got to go somewhere else. So spacing is critical. So, and I was talking about, I'm sorry, I'm getting on tangents. Let's say I'm a perimeter guy and I basket cut. Now my back is to the basket, I can set a back screen. And let's face it, back screens are much more dangerous for a defense than down screens.
Coach, can I ask you a favor?
Sure.
Just try to keep mid-court to your neck.
Oh, great. Okay.
Thanks, Coach. Thank you.
So we would get the back screen is the more dangerous screen of them all because it's coming when you can't see. And if a team is not really good at talking defensively, your back screen is going to set a lot of. But remember this, and this is the screen, if you're a perimeter guy and you cut to the basket and you set this back screen and it's a good screen, and now the guy guarding him gets caught so that your man who's guarding you has to help, you're going to be open. The more screens you set, and I'll even say this, the better screens you set, the more shots you will get. So down screen, back to the ball, back screen, back to the basket. Good spacing, good ball movement, drills, 3-on-3 ball side, where you play on one side of the floor, 2-on-2 ball side. Teach guys how to use screens. Teach guys how to get open on the wing. It's great if you could if you're going to show guys motion, but the other team is denying the heck out of you. You got to teach guys how to get open on the wing also. Then, now all of a sudden, okay, we had these breakdowns: 2-on-2, 3-on-3. Now we're going to try a little 5-on-5. The best 5-on-5 drill there is to teach motion is counting. We would have a game. We'd play a game, and the game was not about scoring. It was about counting passes. You were not allowed to dribble. So it was a 5-on-5, no dribble, half-court game. You could use the whole half-court, and the goal was to make as many passes as you could without turning the ball over. Once it was turned over, the other team got the ball. The first day of practice, when we did this, when I was at Manhattan College, I don't know, maybe we got to 3. Because think about this. If you can't dribble, the defense can pressure the heck out of you, number one, because they're not worried about getting beat off the dribble. Everybody is denying his man as hard as he can. And I used to let guys get loose with their hands and foul because it got to be makes you stronger with the ball. So we're playing 5-on-5, no dribble, counting passes. Every pass you make. And if whoever made the most, whether the first 5 or the second or the 5 that was playing defense, they got the ball after they turned the first team over. Whoever made the most passes we'd give them least passes, would get a suicide. Everything was competitive. So, and what we found was this. Every day we were able to make more and more passes. And then we'd add something to it. We'd add, okay, guys, if you score, that's 5 automatic passes. So let's say you threw 8 passes and now somebody scores, now you got 13. But I said, if you miss the shot, you're -5. So what does this make those guys do? Look for layups. They're not going to take a shot, a jump shot, or a 10-foot shot and risk losing 5 passes. They're only going to take a layup. So you're playing 5-on-5, no dribble. One team gets the 15 passes, they turn it over. The other team gets it. The other team only gets the 13. That's a suicide. We start again. Now we're going to throw in the scoring. We threw 8 passes. I made a layup. We've got 13. Now the other team goes. They take a layup. They miss. They're going to be -5. So whatever passes they had, they're down. This is how you teach guys how to play without the ball, because they find out that I can't screen the ball because they're not allowed to dribble. So the only way that we can move this ball is if I move. And let's understand this. Any offense, and I'll say this about offense in general, if you move and you pass the ball and you make passes, you have good offense. And I don't care what it is, you're going to score. Very, very key thing. So we would have that. Then, so we would start out the first few days, because they weren't very good at it, playing without a dribble. First few days, and we even went full court without dribbles. We even threw that in, where we were playing a full court game and neither team was allowed to dribble. So there becomes a real premium on moving without the ball and getting open. If you don't get open, you're going to turn it over, period. Great drill, even in the full court. So then what we would do is we would make it harder. Say, okay, we're going to play 5-on-5, no dribble, but you got to play from the hash mark and in. You come out, you catch the ball here, turnover. So now, not only do you have to move, you got to move really hard, but think about the space you're going to deal with and how hard that is to do offensively. You know how hard it is to go 5-on-5 within the hash mark without a dribble and try and make 10 passes? Really hard, especially if the defense is playing as hard as they can, because they want to get the ball back so they can get on offense. So you start out half court, you go to the hash mark, no dribble. You even play full court, no dribble. Very important also. Now, one other key concept. Another key concept in terms of offense in this situation is you want to get the ball to the high post area as much as you can. And why? Well, think about this in offense, zone or man offense. And again, I'm going to talk a lot more about the zone as we go on. But think about this. When the ball is live in the middle of the floor, think about every defense. If the ball's here, nothing a defense likes better than that. Why? Because the guys on the weak side can load up. The weak side defenders can give help. There's nothing better than that. You are taught that if you're on the weak side of the floor, you can get into the lane area and give help and obviously still recover in time if the ball is skipped to the weak side of the floor. So that's standard defense. Create a help side. That's why a lot of coaches like to force sideline. If you force sideline, you are now creating a strong side and a weak side. And the weak side can give help. So that's very good conceptually. But what does that tell you? That tells you what? That if I can get the ball in the middle of the floor, that defense has a problem. Because now there is no weak side. And if there's no weak side, who's giving the help? That's why if you can get the ball live in the middle of the floor, now one of your guys is here and one of your guys is here. This guy can't come here because that pass is too short, and neither can he. So now you have no help. And that's why getting the ball live in the middle of the floor is such a key thing. One of our other rules in our motion was when the ball went to the high post, and the truth is, the more rules you have, the less you have true motion. So motion really is about not having a lot of rules. But one of our key rules was, which I thought was important, was every third pass, I wanted the ball reversed through the high post. Every third pass. And if the ball was in the high post, whoever was in this area had to duck in. Whoever it was. Now, you hope it would be a big man a lot of the time, or a bigger guy, because if you're hanging around in this area, you should be a bigger guy. The guards, you would hope, would cut and get out. But we want the ball in the high post area, live in the middle. Now we have no help, and there's nothing better for you as an offensive player is if you can make a play with no help. And obviously, this high-low, by getting that duck in without any help around, if you got a good big guy to get him the ball in there, and a hard duck in. And, you know, it's funny. I tell people about posting up. And I'll do games now, as I do for CBS. And I'll be watching a game, and I'll see a guy and I'll point it out. And, you know, some people say I'm a little hard on some guys, and I probably am. And I'll see guys, the ball go to the high post, and there'll be a big guy here, and he's just standing there. And I would say, now, I would like to tell that kid that in order to touch the ball 8 times a game in a scoring area, you probably got to post up 40 times hard. That's what I used to tell our big guys. I said, you want to score 12 points, 14 points? Well, you better post up 40 times hard in the game and duck in hard. I'm not saying duck in hard. And work at posting up and work at reverse pivoting and work at those things. So you want to catch the ball in the low post? It's a lot of work. And a lot of it is for naught, because you're not going to get the ball 40 times. But for those 40 times, you want to catch it 9 times in a good spot where you got a chance to score, you better do it 40 times hard in the game. So getting the ball in the middle of the floor, high lows, very critical. And now we had 3 perimeter players, let's say, a big guy. And we used to like, when we got the ball to the high post area, we like to get it a little bit opposite of this big guy. So not necessarily right in the middle, but pretty close. And a very key was this guy here, he's become the key guy in college basketball nowadays, or in basketball, not just college basketball. He is, when I was coaching, our 4-man, let's say this is your 4, our 4-man was kind of more of a 4-5. He was a big guy who could probably step away from the basket a little bit, but he certainly wasn't making threes in those days for the most part. We're talking 15, 20 years ago. And he was a mobile guy. He was a guy that – he wasn't a mobile guy. He was more like a center. Now this guy is more like a 3-man. So most teams are playing with 3 guards, 3 perimeter players, and their 4-man is like what I was probably a big 3-man years ago, and then some kind of a big guy, even though some teams don't have any big guys. So this guy was critical because he had perimeter responsibilities of moving and cutting, but he also had inside responsibilities. So if the other big guy, the 5-man, caught the ball in the post, and this 4-man was here, his rule was he's closest to the basket, he's got to be the duck-in guy. So this guy has a lot of responsibility. And nowadays, from a spacing standpoint, you have even more spacing. Because a lot of times you have 4 guys on the floor that can shoot threes. That's the way the game has evolved. And I'll tell you this. If you're I know we have a lot of high school coaches, but if we have college coaches on here, Division III, Division II, Division I, and I know you know this, I don't have to tell you, and I tell this to my assistants, recruit guys that can shoot the ball. And I said this 20 years ago, because think about this. If I have to guard you here, look at all the space. If I don't have to guard you and I can stand in there, then it's hard for you to help us on offense. So recruit guys that make it so that the defense has to cover more of the floor. It's just physics. It's not really anything else. If a defense has to cover this much of the court, that's got to be a lot harder than guarding this much of the court. The more guys you have that can shoot the ball, the harder it is for that defense to defend that much of the court. So guys that can shoot, and you see it now in the game. Even the NBA's gotten like that, obviously. The more guys you have out there that can make a three, the better off you are. Now, people say, you know what, I just don't have enough control if motion. It just bothers me. I want to know where the shots are coming from. And that's a valid complaint about it. But we used to do what we call limitation games, where we would play 5-on-5.5. Oh, no, let me just throw this in, which I should have said earlier. Another concept: offense, zone, man, whatever. Reverse the ball. You see teams out there that sometimes they're just playing on one side. To me, and this kind of goes to what I was talking about, help side, weak side. If you reverse the ball from one side to the other, you're making guys go from strong to weak to strong to weak, depending on how many times the ball gets reversed. All that movement by the defense takes them out of position. And you know what? You only need a defensive player to be out of position by a half a step, where instead of him being here and taking a charge, he's here and comes in late and then ends up being a block. So ball reversals, critical in offense, both sides of the floor. Make the defense move. It's funny, you come down, sometimes I watch games and I see guys come down, they're playing on this side, and the defense is so loaded up. I'm like, you couldn't score in a million. You're trying to score in this area where there are 5 defenders instead of this area when there are 5 defenders. So use the entire floor by reversing the ball. Now, how do you gain some control? You want certain guys to shoot. Well, we had a guy playing for us named Kerry Kittles, who was a first-team All-American. He was the 7th pick by the New Jersey Nets in 1996. I think 96. Maybe it was 97. Anyway, and he obviously was a guy we wanted to take the most shots. And you know what's funny about this? It seems to me like your best players will take the most shots. That's just the way it's going to evolve. But you can help it evolve that way by playing what we would call limitation games. We would say, okay, in those days it was a 35-second clock. Now we're at 30. So you start the clock at 23 because I figure it takes 7 seconds to get up the court. And you say to your guys, all right, and we played half court a lot, 5-on-5, a lot. And this is how we worked on, again, both our offense and our defense, but we played half court a lot. So we would tell our guys, okay, limitation. On this possession, only 2 guys, these 2 guys are the only ones that can shoot. So what happens then? Your guys become very cognizant of getting them open, screening for them, setting good screens. So that was one limitation game. Designate, on this possession here, only these 2 guys can shoot. And think about how hard your guys are going to work. You got 23 seconds to get only 2 guys a shot. They're going to work hard at screening. Screening. You want to have a great offense? Set good screens. How do you teach guys to set good screens? Another limitation game. 23 seconds on the clock. Okay, on this possession, guys, I need to see 5 good screens before you take a shot. And one of our assistants would see 1, 2, 3. No, and the guys, they know the count. When they set 5 good screens, now they can look to shoot. Makes guys cognizant of setting good screens. These are teachable things. Like people say, well, how can I get my guys to screen? Make them screen. Make them screen. Make it so that, guess what? You can't shoot the ball until I see 5 good screens. How about this? You can't shoot the ball until I see each guy on offense set 1 good screen. Each guy's got to set a good screen. And if it was an illegal screen, obviously that's not a good screen. And if it was a brush, that's not a good screen. And the assistant coach would call out. And when we got to 5, and you know what they noticed too after a while? They noticed that when they set 5 good screens, a lot of times they got a pretty good shot after that. So you're teaching them to believe in what you do, how important that is for them to believe it, because they got to see it works. If you could sit five, and then we would say at times, we play, so that was another limitation game. 5 good screens. 1 good screen by each guy. How about this? The only way we can score on this possession is if a guy sets a back screen and comes to the ball. You'd see a ton of back screens. You'd see a ton of basket cuts, because we said back to the basket, back screen. You'd see a ton of basket cuts, hard basket cuts, ton of back screens, and guys learning how to step to the ball. Because remember, the guy who screens the most is the forgotten man. So we would say, hey, on this possession, the screener needs to score. That makes guys cognizant of screening and coming back to the ball, or screening and going opposite the cutter. If the cutter's popping out, as we said before, you flare the other way. Getting these kind of concepts into guys was very, very important. So you could get guys to screen. How about ball reversals? You see coaches say, you know, man, I got to get my guys to reverse the ball. Okay, you want to get them to reverse the ball? Make them reverse it. How? When we play half court, you're not allowed to take a shot until that ball gets reversed 3 times. So you got 23 seconds to get a shot. And you know what else that teaches guys? They get that ball moving quick, because they realize we don't want to reverse it 3 times and have 3 seconds on the shot clock. What's that doing for us? We want to reverse it 3 times in like 6 seconds and now have 17 seconds to get something done. And you know what they notice? They notice that when they reverse the ball and they use the whole court, driving lanes open up, shots open up, because guys are trying to get into position to take charges, and they're not in position to take charges. Nothing is better an offense than ball reversals. Nothing. And you know, hey, look, it's easy for me to say. I'm sitting there now on TV, you know, watching this stuff, and I understand that. But I did do it, and I think this is a very effective way to teach guys. You want to teach them to screen? Don't let them shoot before they set good screens. You want to teach guys to reverse the ball? Don't let them shoot till they reverse it 3 times. You want certain guys to get shots? Only these 2 guys are allowed on this possession. Obviously, in a game, you don't want only one guy to take a shot. I got that. But you want to teach guys, if we need a basket with a minute to go, and you can run a set play. I mean, we did run some set plays. We had some things in our bag just in case, you know what I mean? We wanted to get something really specific at the end of the game. But I can tell you this, and one of the things that we were, and they don't have this, you know, like they have now, this synergy where you can find out who the best teams in the country are with less than 4 seconds on the shot clock. I think that's a really interesting stat. And, you know, one of the crazy things was my former school, Villanova, was the #1 team in the country this year in scoring with less than 4 seconds on the shot clock. And why do I think that's a really good stat? I think it's a great stat because I think it shows your team doesn't get panicky when the shot clock's winding down. You know, a lot of times, you know, the crowd starts, you know, when it gets down to like 10, they start counting down 9, 8 to let you know where the shot clock is. Really good teams, they use the whole shot clock and don't act desperate. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen every so often, but being aware of the clock and not panicking. And I thought the teams that I had on the offensive end were very good at running the motion all the way down and ending up with a good shot.
Coach, I got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
First one is, do you ever run into any coaches that run motion that really don't ever call any set plays at all? They just give the principles, you know, kind of back to the day of Bobby Knight or Coach Knight, where it's just motion is motion and you let them hit and read. Are there any people out there like that now?
No, that's a good question. I think not that I know of. I think most people have some sets incorporated into their motion. And, you know, one of the other things that I loved about motion, Tom, that kind of this question brought forth is that when you're in motion, you're constantly on offense. I remember Coach Massimino was a tremendous coach. I said, but he was a set play guy. And so we'd run a play, and if it didn't work, the point guard would back it out and look at the bench, and Coach Mass would call another play. And I always felt like when he was backing that ball out, defense can rest. So running motion you're constantly on the attack, and the defense never gets a chance to rest. Getting back to your question, I think there are very few, like Dean Smith, pure motion. Bobby Knight, pure motion. Mike Krzyzewski is probably the closest guy to being a pure motion, but he's a fast motion coach. He's not a 7-pass motion coach like Bobby Knight was.
Right.
He's a 3-pass motion, but it's motion, and he's one of the more motion guys.
Here's your next one. Coach, do you do any set plays you can show that keeps the ball out of the corner?
Yeah, I mean, sure. There were, we had a couple of set. Now, in my day, we were looking to get the ball inside a lot. But let me do this one. So we ran a play that was a good play for us, and the ball wasn't necessarily in the corner, but it got to the wing, where we would dribble this guy through, and then we'd run a pick and roll here, and come out the other side, and we'd hit the misdirection guy most of the time. So we had some plays to get certain guys a three-point shot, but I was one of these guys that was mostly motion. Didn't run a lot of set plays, but you can run a lot of stuff out of a box set to keep the ball out of the corners. And I think that's what a lot of people do. You come over here, up screen, down screen, different things like that out of the box set. Those things can work for you by keeping the ball out of the corners.
Coach, could you run through some of your favorite inbounds plays underneath or on the side?
Well, now you're going to date me a little bit here to find these things that I got to remember, which will be.
Well, you can also, if you've seen any good ones in games, you can go through those too.
Yeah, well, one of the ones that we used to run all the time at Villanova, which was a good one against man or zone, was to get this guy. This is your best shooter. So you duck in, you fake in, you come out. Hit here, out, reverse it, hard dribble, duck in, and then a screen in for the inbounder. They always talk about how the inbounder is a forgotten guy in out-of-bounds plays. And so that was a good play for a good shooter taking the ball out of bounds. So I'll do it again. Let's say this is your 2, 4, 5, 1, 3. Fake in, pop out. Get it in. And then just kind of hang around in this area. Pop out. Reverse it to the one man. Okay, so now we're kind of like this.
Hold it up a little higher, Coach. 2. Thank you.
The one's got the ball there. 4, pass it to him. The guy taking it out is kind of hanging on here. You hard dribble, flare. 5 ducks in. 4 screens in for 2. And again, this will work man or zone. You can screen the back guy of the zone, or if it's a man-to-man, obviously. And you know what happens? If this guy's a good shooter and this guy's got to show a little bit, he gets a slip to the basket. And that's why I used to tell the big guys especially, if you could screen for Kerry Kittles, that'd be good for you because people are worried about him coming off the screen, and you're going to end up being the forgotten man and end up slipping to the basket and getting a layup.
Coach, you were talking about how Villanova was so good at those 3-second, 4-second, 5-second plays. I'll give you one. Coach Jay Wright did 2 videos on late game situations, under 5, under 4, under 3. They're 2 of the best videos. He did them in Las Vegas, I think. But if you want to look at them, go to Championship Productions. They're great videos on set plays under certain conditions, like 7 seconds, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2. So, Coach, I got 2 more questions for you. Let's see here. How did you call the numbers of how the players moved after they passed, similar to Coach Huggins, where each number stands for either a basket cut, screen away, deny, or screen?
I don't understand the question really.
Let's see. Did you call?
We really
numbers?
didn't. In other words, once we had those guys out there playing, sure, we watched a ton of tape with our guys and showed them things, but we really didn't call that stuff out while the game was going on.
Good. So I guess the biggest one would be you taught pretty much great motion offense, correct? So those are all just reads and reacts.
Yes.
So you're not scouting them, you're not calling them, you're just, hey guys, you need to know if they do this, you're going to do this.
And and what happens is, and I know it sounds kind of like helter skelter in a lot of ways, but one of the first things I said when we started was, and I learned this in time because I was worried when I first did this because I had never really, it's a lot easier to have watched a coach teach it, and I didn't have that opportunity because Coach Massimino was not a motion guy. He wanted to have too much control over the offense. So, but what I did find was your instincts as a coach will take over. You'll see when it's not good. You'll see, and here's the bottom line. You reverse the ball. You move the ball. You screen. You cut hard. You got good offense. And you space. There you go. It's not that complicated as it sounds.
You want to go through some of your reads off for those wings or those guys cutting off screens? Do you want to go through any of that? Or I'll just turn you loose on your remaining part of the presentation. I'll let you go.
Well, yeah, I'd like to get to the zone stuff if we could.
Good, go. You got as much time as you need, Coach.
All right, great. Thank you. So and the last thing I did want to say about a man-to-man, and, people ask me, well, what hurt you when you played? What kind of a defense could hurt your motion? And I would say the thing that you worry about the most is teams that switch everything. And I do remember Denny Crum was one of the first guys who was the coach at Louisville many years ago. He was one of the first guys that switched everything. He had a lot of very versatile players that could guard different positions. So switching defense is probably the thing that hurts the most. But you teach, again, this is something you teach your guys. You teach your guys the counters against a switching defense. And what are the counters? This is the last thing I'll say about man-to-man offense before we get to the zone. The key thing against a switching defense is the screener. So if I'm going to pass and screen here, and these two guys are going to switch, there's two things that I can do. One is I can make like I'm going to screen and replace myself. That will cause some confusion amongst the defense. The big thing that you see more than anything else that you want your guys to learn is the slip screen. The slip screen is a key screen. So I go to screen, and instead of screening, I make like I'm screening, and I slip to the basket. But again, in both these situations, the key guy is the screener. So the best remedy for a switching defense is hitting the screener and teaching your guys slip screens, because then the defense becomes they're yelling switch, switch, and instead of just you popping out, boom, you slip to the basket. And you see a lot of teams, the slip screen has become a bigger part of basketball in the last 5 years, I think, than it ever was when I was coaching. People are slipping screens. You see guys out here, big guys, out here setting screens, and boom, running to the rim. So you see that a lot now, and that helps. And sometimes they're not even slipping a screen a lot of times. A lot of times they're not even coming close to the ball handler, and they're slipping to the basket. So the slip screen is a key. Okay, I did want to.
Coach, one question. What do you think about the Princeton stuff? Any thoughts? That's one of the questions.
That's a good question. That stuff has been very, very successful for a long time. You got to be very well schooled in it to do it, and you got to be very committed to it to do it. Do I think it's great? I know John Thompson III at Georgetown a few years ago was one of the few guys that tried to speed it up a little bit. You know what I mean? I think people looked at it and said, do I want to play that way? And now there's a 30-second clock. I mean, that offense was geared on, we're going to run this thing until you finally fall asleep and make a mistake. And I think that has gone – I don't know if it's quite as effective. And I don't know. I think Joe Scott, who's the new coach at Air Force, I think he's a guy that's still probably doing it. I know Chris Mooney at Richmond, who played for Pete Carrill, he's kind of speeded it up a little bit, and he's had some success. They were very good last year, and they should be very good this year. So it can be done, but it's not easy, because I think that offense is geared to run it. Team that all of a sudden just doesn't stay defensively disciplined enough. They fall asleep. and you get a layup.
Last one, I'll let you go to zone. How would you coach, or how would you compare the IQ of basketball players now for the players you coached?
Well, I coached some guys with tremendous, and it's hard for me to say because, I'm watching guys and I'm not seeing them in practice every day and stuff like that. So that makes it a little bit hard. But I would say that there was more of a it meant more to move without the ball in the past than it does now. I think now the key is shooting threes. By being able to shoot threes, you're creating more spacing. Creating the spacing allows guys to go to the dribble and get to the foul line more. And I guess analytically, that's kind of what the game has become. But I think people had to move more without the ball in the old, I don't want to say old days, but when I was coaching, I think people had to move more without the ball. I think players were taught how to move without the ball better. I know I had a guy, Kerry Kittles was, I say it to this day, he was the smartest player I ever coached, in that he knew how to move without that ball. And he was a guy who was a great player. But what made him great was his mind and how he played without the ball. So I'm going to say that now the game has evolved into something else now.
Go ahead, Coach. Zone.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about zone. And let me say this. Conceptually about zone, we ran motion against zone. But the first most important things that we did was we taught our guys concepts against the zone. We had what we called our 10 rules against the zone. Rule number 1 was beat the zone down the court. Now let's understand this.
All right, man. What do you got?
A zone, let's say we're talking about a 2-3 zone. There are gray areas in this defense. That's a gray area. That's a gray area. That's a gray area. So if you can push the ball down the floor, and I'm not even saying get the ball down the floor and get a layup. No, I'm talking about get the ball down the floor before those guys in the zone are in their positions. If I push the ball up the floor to this area, who's got this guy? Is it him? Is it the back guy? You've now created some indecision in that defense. So very important. You're playing against a team that's a really good zone team. Push the ball. But I'm not saying push the ball and force it to the basket, force a layup. Get it up quickly, and maybe get it into a gray area quickly will create some indecision between these two guys that they never recover from. So number 1 rule that we had against the zone, push the ball up the floor. Number 2, and it was funny, when I was a kid and we played basketball in high school, when you played against the zone, you know what the coach told you? The ball better not touch the floor. You got to move the ball. No. There are uses of the dribble. And like any good offense, if I can use the dribble and create a situation where 2 guys have to guard me, that's good offense. So we want to use the dribble to get into these gaps and force 2 people to guard me. Because if I can force 2 people to guard me, we are 4-on-3 against these guys. And that's good offense. So use of the dribble was so important. Get into against a 2-3 zone. Get into the gap. There's a gap. Here's a gap. There's a gap. Use the dribble to make 2 people guard you. If I can make 2 people guard me, that is going to result in us probably getting a good shot. Because if 2 people are guarding me, then we are 4 against 3 on the rest of the court. So use the dribble. The other thing that will help you create those situations is screening the zone. If I could screen that zone, the same thing applies. And get into a gap, we could go 4-on-3. And I don't think in the old days, people didn't screen zones as much. Nowadays, you see people screening zones a lot, and it's become very, very important and something that people have incorporated into their zone offense. And again, these are 10 rules. And then how you want to play after that, it's up to you. Motion, 4 guys out, 3 guys out, 2 in, it's up to you. But if everybody understands your zone rules, good things will happen. Another important rule, rule number 3. Similar to what I said about man offense. Look for the high post all the time. I can't tell you how many times I watch games and you're playing against a 2-3 zone and the ball will never go here. And that is the most dangerous place to get the ball against the zone for the same reason. Think about this. If I get the ball here, what do all these guys do? They all cheat in a little bit. If you can make that zone shift in because they're worried about the ball in the middle of the floor, you have a great chance of getting that ball moving. You might have a shot here, but getting that ball moving to the weak side, because all of a sudden, if that ball is in the high post area, it's a danger zone. So you want to make sure you get the ball to the high post as much as you can. So very important, look for the post at all times. And he can look for a guy ducking in. He can look to the perimeter because the defense is sucked in a little bit, and now good things will happen for you. But you must get the ball into the high post area as much as you can. The other thing that's important, and the other thing that getting into the post, and this is great, if you have a big guy that can pass the ball, getting the ball reversed through the post is critical. Because that's a great way, once you've got it into the middle of the floor, using your post guy as a passer is critical. And let me talk about this pass. You get it into the low post. I love it when I watch games and I see guys automatically reverse pivot and fire it to the weak side of the floor. There is no more effective pass than low post, weak side. And you could tell the teams that have really been coached to do this because their big guys will catch the ball and not just flat-footed turn, but turn, step, and wow, throw a rocket to a guy here on the weak side of the floor. So getting the ball from the low post to the opposite side is critical in terms of getting good offense going. So reversing through the post, whether it's the low post or the high post, is critical in good offense, good zone offense. Here's one that you don't see as much anymore. And this one here, people should do without question. Fake passes. When you play against pressure, it's funny. People shot fake all the time nowadays. It's become a really important part of the game for three-point shooters. Shot fake, one dribble, draw a guy, kick to somebody. Fake passes. But people don't fake their passes like they fake jump shots, fake shots anymore. And I'll tell you this. If you're playing against a good aggressive zone, you pass fake, this guy will just maybe just lean that way. That might be all you need to get into this gap. We talk about teaching guys to do this. When we would play zone offense, we tell our guys, you can't take a shot unless I see at least 3 pass fakes on this possession. And guess what? Guys will pass fake, and they will see how the pass fake can help them. So fake your passes. Always be ready to shoot. There's another zone rule number 5. Always be ready to shoot when you catch the ball. This is going way out the window. When I was a kid working at 5-star camp, they would teach fundamentals. One of the big fundamentals they would call triple threat. I don't even hear it mentioned anymore. What makes you a triple threat? Being in a position to pass, dribble, and shoot. You can't be standing there with the ball over your head like this because guess what? The defense doesn't have to guard you because the only thing you can do in that situation is pass. So you want guys on the perimeter being ready to shoot. And I say this all the time on TV. Good shooters know a shot before they catch the ball. So being ready, being shot ready is going to make you a much better offensive player. So against the zone, and this works for man-to-man also, always be in triple threat position when you catch the ball and always be ready to shoot the ball. Here's an important one. Attack the offensive glass. This is number 6. The nature of a zone is you're guarding an area. So who do I box? If there's a guy here and a guy here and I'm on defense here, who am I boxing out? Well, you have to – now, it's something that you really got to work on if you want to play zone defense is guys seeing who's available to box out. But the bottom line is get to the offensive glass. Jim Boeheim runs one of the best zones ever. But they have struggled mightily over the years with teams' offensive rebounding against them. It's one of the things that, by nature of what it is, you don't do real well. And so one thing about Syracuse, as good a zone as they play, and as much as they win, they don't do a good job on the offensive glass for this reason. Who do you box out? So go to the offensive glass hard against the zone. Number 7, and by the way, these aren't in any particular order. Reverse the ball. We talked about that man offense. Obviously, it's going to be as important in zone offense. If we can get this defense to shift, the more they shift, the more they have a chance of not getting to a gray area. Remember, we talked about gray area. Create, and if you want to think of this concept against zone, create gray areas. The more gray areas you can create, the better your offense is going to be against the zone. That's the only way it is. So reverse the ball, make the defense shift, and create gray areas. Make it so that these guys here aren't sure who's got that. These two guys here, they lean the wrong way, and guess what? Here's another forgotten area. Get the ball to the baseline. Get the ball to the short corner. I watch games, and teams play offense against the zone from here to here. Well, I think it's important to use the whole court. It goes back to the concept I was talking about before of use the entire court. Get the ball to the short corners also. So reverse the ball, get the ball to the short corners. Very, very critical. Next rule. Cut from behind. I'll never forget, I was a kid in high school, and I went to see Princeton play Fordham in like 1973. And I remember Pete Carrillo, who obviously ran the Princeton offense. He also was a great defensive coach. He had this 1-2-2 matchup zone that was brutal, tough to play against. And the one thing I remember about that game to this day, I remember those players, the back guys. So he had a 1-2-2. And I remember these two guys here constantly doing this. I can't even do it now. My neck hurts. Constantly looking behind. I never saw anything like it because he had those guys so well schooled in looking for cutters. And a lot of times in zone, you see this guy here in the middle, and he's looking straight ahead, and boom, somebody ducks in on him because he doesn't know where he came from. So if you're going to cut from behind the zone where they can't see you. Kind of makes sense. Sneak up behind the zone. Next, and this is really so important, and this is the last one, be patient and take good shots. To me, the most coached thing there is shot selection. I think if you have guys on your team taking bad shots or taking shots they can't make, that's not good. You can't have a good team. Shot selection is critical. So teaching a guy what a good shot is for him. I'll give you an example. I would tell a guy on our team at Villanova who wasn't a good shooter and he'd shoot a 3 or something that I didn't like. It was contested 3. I'd say, you can't shoot that shot. And he said, well, coach, I think I can make it. I said, well, let me just say this. If you can make 37% of your shots from half court, I'll let you shoot from half court every time. I'll let you come down and shoot from half court. And they look at me and say, well, guess what? You can't do that. That's why you're not taking shots from half court. If you could make 37% of your threes from half court, I'd let you do it, but you can't do it. Nobody can. That's why we don't shoot from half court. Do what you can do and do it well. Shaquille O'Neal's in the Hall of Fame. If Shaquille O'Neal spent his career bringing the ball up and trying to shoot threes, he would not have been a good player. What made him a great player was he knew what he could do, and that's what he did. Stay within your capabilities. If you want to expand your capabilities, expand them in the off season and work on them. So these are just some concepts that we believed in against the zone. And again, offensively, you want to run 4 guys out. And here was another big key. And I'll tell you this. Here's the move. If you're running a motion in your zone offense, here's a key move. Don't ever have your guys pass and exchange. That's like a waste. Have your guys pass and cut to the basket, especially against a matchup zone, because these guys are going to try and figure out if you can decide late which way you're going, it speaks to sneaking around and not letting them find you. So don't just exchange on the perimeter. Make sure you cut. Any questions?
Coach, great job. I got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
First one is, could you send 3 to the glass versus zone if you're spread with 3 out or 4 out?
Some people will say, there are guys that believe they should only send 2 to the glass. So I think that's a philosophical question. I think against the zone, if you're playing against a team that doesn't run a lot, you might even send 4 to the glass, depending on your scouting report. 3 to the glass, definitely. You need to send 3 to the glass against the zone all the time. Some people, like I said, will send 4 if they're playing against a team that's not looking to run much.
How would we build the philosophy or motion or read and react offense for a young team like U14 so they avoid confusion with their options? Dribble penetration, back screen can be made in the same way, bad spacing or timing. Any suggestions on implementation for younger kids?
So simple. Here's what you do. You have them play. It's going to be ugly in the beginning, no question. You have them play this game of you can't dribble. They will learn the concept of moving without the ball because the only way you can move the ball is if you get open. Play that game of no dribble. Guys, we're going to, even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just so they can understand the concept. The other concept they can understand is, okay, guys, you're not allowed to shoot until we throw 7 passes. And they're going to learn how, and you watch. I saw it. I did it. They will get better and better every day. In the beginning, it's going to look bad. But every day, they're going to start. It's like learning anything. They're going to start to understand playing without the dribble, moving without the ball, throwing 7 passes before we take a shot. They're going to understand those concepts. And it takes time. And the younger the kid, the more difficult it will be. But I believe 14 years old. And if you told me 9 years old, I said, no. 14, no question, they can do this.
I think Coach Massimino ran a great 1-3-1, correct?
Yes.
So could you talk about how would you beat a 1-3-1?
Okay, 1-3-1 is a little bit different because a 1-3-1 is so spread out. It's kind of limited what you can do. So most teams, and there really isn't much you can do, will set up against it with a 2-1-2. And now the key thing here also, we still have gaps. You got a gap there, a gap there. The key is against a 1-3-1 is the baseline. Obviously, this one guy has to guard those 2. And that's what this defense is susceptible to getting beat in the corners. And that's one of the, but what we would do is very simple. When we hit the corner, we would dive the post, flash the weak side corner, and flare the weak side guard. So I'll do that again. It's kind of, I think that Dean Smith used to call this the T game. That's what they ran. Same thing. So here's the offense. And I'll leave it without the defense. The ball went to the corner. It was roll the big guy, flash, get a high-low maybe, flare the weak side. And this guy, if on that skip, and the skip pass is a very important pass against the zone because it makes the zone shift twice. Zones are used to shifting 1 pass at a time. When you throw a skip pass, the zone's got to shift twice. So that's kind of simple thing that most people, and this really, you're kind of limited what you can do against a 1-3-1 offensively, which is why a lot of people, like Coach Massimino, I'll give you an example of what he would do. He would show 1-3-1, and when the ball went to the corner, it become a 2-3. So, and that way you were going 2-1-2 against it. He would put a 2-1-2 defense. You didn't know it. And basically what he would do is he would make you run your zone offense when he was man-to-man. But you didn't know he was man-to-man. That's just a little sideline of how Coach Massimino thought.
Coach, how do you handle trapping zone defenses?
Trapping zone defenses, I used to tell our guys, if you're a good player, you want to be trapped. If you're a good player, you want to be trapped because, again, once we pass out of that trap, we're 4 against 3. So we like it when people trap. So we would tell our guys, be strong with the ball, fake up, try and split, try and get through it. You know, I mean, if it's not a great double team, try to fake up high, get low, step through, just the regular, and have the rest of the team ready to come to the ball. That's the other thing. When you're playing against a trapping defense, you need guys to come and help and come to the ball.
Coach, you got anything else you want to share?
No, I think we covered it.
I think you've done a great job, man. Great job. Troy, you got anything before we adjourn? Before John Brandon gets on from Cincinnati?
No specific questions, but thanks a lot, Coach. It was interesting, and I love the energy you brought.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. It really was a lot of fun. Thank you.
A lot of great comments, just so you know it. Kind words, and just thanks for you being on. Thanks for the NABC, and thanks for championship. But I would say this, Coach, we got one left. One left coming up right now. And in 32 minutes, John Brandon from Cincinnati. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, Coach.
You too, Tom. And I hope I didn't put you to sleep having to see 100 of these.
Oh, hey, you were fantastic. Your excitement and your enthusiasm is contagious. I was running laps around here, wanting to get into the half-court trap, and have a great day. Thanks for everything.
Stay safe, guys.
You too.
Thanks, guys.
Troy, we'll talk to you a little bit.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.